Hello and welcome to the Stories with Sash podcast, the podcast in which we try and answer all things motoring related and other bits and pieces as well. Today, I am joined by only one other, and it's somebody you're familiar with by now. It's Robert. How are we doing, Rob? How's it going?
I'm really good, thanks, Sash. And you?
I am very good, although we have lost our esteemed friend, colleague.
We've got a man down, left in the field of battle.
Yes, Mike, unfortunately, is unable to make it today, and this recording is done a bit later, but he seems very occupied at the moment. So we wish Mike all the best in his endeavours. Well, he hasn't died or anything, but he's fine, and he'll be back, I'm sure. So on today's podcast, we've had a few
you weren't pretty sure about that, were you?
No, of course I was. No. Well, the thing is, though, we normally have a little discussion about what we like to talk about in the podcast. So I normally come up with the sort of ideas and premise and just run it through you guys. And I did want to sort of talk about future classics, but to quote unquote Rob, he doesn't give a flying shit
not really interested in classic cars. With the possible exception is that the only thing that made me think about classic. Normally, I look at classic cars and go, "Oh, that's interesting." Anyway, the only thing that made me think that they might be interesting this week was I watched. What was I watching? I think I was watching like one of these period dramas on Netflix because I have a raging social life here in the party capital of the Gulf. I was thinking to myself, I wonder if you have like a classic car, if you can get paid by people like Netflix or the BBC or anyone who makes like a period relevant drama or something they need period relevant vehicles. I wonder if there's like you buy one and you keep it maintained, you keep it looking fresh, and then you put yourself on some kind of shortlist for when your car was kind of on the road, and then the BBC call and say we're making, I don't know, Inspector Morse or Netflix say they're going to make The Crown or something like that, and then they go, oh yeah, you've got a 1985
Ford Capri,
and that would be a car that could that's time relevant. Let's get that. What was the other thing was on Netflix was Sex Education, which is really strange because they all have phones and then they drive cars from the late 80s and early 90s. I don't know what's going on there.
I haven't watched that. What sort? Oh, right. No, I haven't actually. Wait, who's that got in it? Is it? No.
It's got that guy who was in Ender's Game. He was the kid in Ender's Game.
I know. I was sorry. I was thinking of Bad Education, which has got Jack Whitehall in it, not Sex Education. That's a different program. Well, actually, funny you should mention this. We slightly diverted, but for those of you who are listening to this in the UK, last night was the second episode of the new series of Top Gear. And to cut the long story short, this is related to what you were saying, Rob. They were testing their favourite 90s supercars that could do 200 miles an hour, right? Mm-hmm. And, one of them Chris Harris had a Ferrari F40, Freddie Flintoff had a Jaguar XJ220, and Paddy McGuinness had a Lamborghini Countach, which he crashed. No, he crashed it, spun off the road. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it. But I was thinking...
Spoiler alert before you...
Yeah, I should have said that. Sorry. Well, now you know. Basically, and it happened right near the beginning of the film. So they're recording it, and they were trying to get to this test track to do a series of tests in the car. And on the way, basically, he wasn't even going that fast. It was like 40 miles an hour, and it was a bit wet. And he thinks there was a bit of oil on the ground or something like that.
Excuses.
Yeah, excuses. But honestly, this Lambo was not in a good way afterwards. Like, a lot of panels were just either needed to be replaced or just completely refurbished. But going back to your point, I was thinking about that last night when I was watching. I was like, is there just a queue of people who, like you say, who are on some sort of waiting list who are just like... Because the Jaguar XJ220, for example, or all of those cars, they're not exactly common, right?
No.
So... only a handful of people out there actually have them. So presumably, or maybe they ring up dealerships or something like that sort of specialise it. But there must be like a pool of people out there go, look, we want to do a review, or so and so wants to do something with a Lamborghini Countach. Can you hook us up? And yeah,
Sash, I've
what?
thought of something.
What?
Your Fiat.
What about it?
If you made it like mint on the outside again, you could be featured in like early 90s dramas.
I mean, bit far fetched, mate. I mean, the Fiat Cinquecento, although it is a great, it should. I don't really feel like there's a lot of demand out there for it to be featured in early 90s period dramas.
Mate, you never know. You never know.
I mean, you're right, Rob. You're right, but
it is probably, you know, you want to like maybe aim it a little bit higher. You could maybe something like I was going to say a Mercedes of that era, but they're basically the same as Mercedes of pretty much everything up till now.
Well, you say that. I mean, classic Mercedes, they're quite, you know, the 90s in general, you can tell with styling, design, and ethos is quite boxy. You know, everything had quite, you know, straight edges in the 90s. You know,
something interesting. Sorry, I don't want to talk too much about classic cars because we are going to wait for Mike on this. But there is a nice cafe here that always has classic Mercedes in it.
Does it?
It had. So the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi is a famous guy. He was the first president of the UAE. His name's Sheikh Zayed. For anyone who wants to go and Google him, he had a Mercedes 600 Grosser in black.
Right.
And they had it in this cafe in a nice glass box, and they've got pictures of when he picked up the Queen from the airport in his 600 Grosser.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it looked good because he's driving. This is like the really olden days before there was too many roads in Abu Dhabi, and so he's just driving on like compacted sand, and there's like camels running alongside. There's the Queen looking in the back, going, "Philip, where have I come?"
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I've actually seen a 600 Grosser, and specifically, I don't know whether he still owns it or not. I don't think he does anymore, but Jeremy Clarkson used to have a 600 Grosser,
yeah,
a green one, and which he called the Green Grocer, and of course, you know, it makes sense. And behind where my parents live is this very specialist Mercedes dealership, which apparently a lot of famous people get their Mercedes done there, and you see Mercedes of all different era there. To be fair, Rob, I actually think the only classic car you would ever actually or probably own is a Mercedes, because they were because I think they were so well built that back then that you in your mind you wouldn't have to really compromise so much when it came to reliability.
I mean, I was really tempted. I mean, I kind of went for the Golf R because it's a silly car for someone who's in their mid-20s to have. It's quite a laugh. But I think it was that was like that Mercedes, that 80s Mercedes. It was like had like a bonnet you could land aircraft on, and it was like a 2-seater convertible, and it had like big square lights.
The SL you're thinking of?
No. It's like I think it's a C something CL. Oh, do you know what? I'm going to Google it.
I think you're thinking of SL, to be honest, but I could be wrong. But yeah, because I think the other day we were looking at this other classic car auction site, which Mike put us in touch with, and I think that had a Mercedes SL, which you were quite interested in.
That was oh right, no, it wasn't that one. Sorry, that was a 560 SL, but it wasn't quite like that. It was a little bit later. It had like square lights with like
I don't know.
I think it might have been an SL. You might be right there. You might be right.
Those have got very square headlights.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
and they have got long bonnets. They do look cool, I have to admit, and you can get them with a plethora of different engines in them. So I think you could get anything, well, like different V8s and V6s. I think you can get in them as well.
So the one I was looking at was a 350 SL. It was an SL. You're right. I've just found a picture of it.
Yeah.
I thought that would be a super cool car to have. And then I realised trying to get parts for it is going to make me want to pull off my own face.
What? Well, yeah, I suppose. But is Mercedes not common in?
Oh, they are, yeah. But like classic car, like if it's not less than 10 years old, it's a nightmare to get parts for. Put it into perspective, I'm helping a friend of mine sort of refurbish this Jeep Wrangler, 1993 Jeep Wrangler he's been given. he's deregistered it. He's going to use it just for off-roading, basically.
Mm.
And I went down to his workshop and was helping him sort out the transfer box this weekend. And stupidly, one of us dropped the magnet. So in the bottom of the transfer case and gearboxes, there's always like a little magnet, and that's obviously so if you grind the gears by accident, and obviously takes small shavings of metal off, the magnet will catch the metal shavings in the bottom and stop it from being recirculated through and damaging something like the synchro.
Yeah, makes sense.
But like it's an obscure part, and it's kind of as things evolve, like transfer boxes and whatever, the size of the magnet changes and all this kind of thing. So to get a magnet shipped, it's only like €5 or like £5 or whatever it is. But to get a magnet is a 3-week lead time for the right magnet, which is just unacceptable. Like,
yeah, you're right. I think this is a story with a lot of classic cars, as you say sometimes, and I don't think it'd be as bad as that in the UK, but it probably would still have to wait a little bit for a classic. Although I don't think we've got much more better sort of industry in terms of breakers yards and so on and so forth. I think compared to Abu Dhabi, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. There's
So
cars there's a greater variety of, especially European cars in the UK at breakers yards, whereas here it's kind of there's a lot of American and Japanese stuff. So
interesting. Well, you actually have already answered what I was going to ask, because normally I ask both of you guys when you're on, what have you been up to in the week? So you've been fixing or helping somebody fix an old Jeep Wrangler, which I'm actually quite a big fan of those Wranglers. I think they look quite cool.
I would really want to get one and make it look like the Jeep Wranglers in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that would be cool. It's interesting
so
that
cool.
You mentioned it, because on last week's Wheeler Dealers as well, they had just done not the Wrangler, the one that predates the Wrangler, which is called a CJ7.
Yes,
they did different CJ. They did something called the CJ7 Renegade, and it was a limited edition one, which it was a Levi's limited edition, basically Levi's had jeans. This is for anyone who's not clear. Did the interior?
Oh, so it was all denim.
It was all denim, but obviously it's a bit of a fire hazard, so they coated it with a vinyl on top or something. But it looked amazing. It looked really good. It was white with a blue stripe, and it had this denim interior and a denim dashboard.
Did they have a denim soft top? Because they came as soft tops. Now a denim soft top car would look hilarious.
Yeah, it was blue, but I don't know whether it was made from Devon and then wrapped in vinyl. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it looked cool. And to be fair, I think as we touched upon this the other day, I'm kind of torn. I know we've gone slightly off topic here, but I'm kind of torn between maybe getting, because you know me, I like a project car on the side or something like that. And I'm either torn between either a little convertible again or a little 4x4 thing.
I'm quite tempted to have a 4x4.
A 4x4 would be quite cool.
I mean, for here, I was just kind of because right, okay. I mean, I can give you a whole lowdown on what I've done this weekend. So, I mean, there's some motoring related stuff and there's some other kind of leisure related activities. So, first thing we did on Thursday is we went to the pub because it's Thursday. Sorry, Thursday is our Friday, basically. So
yes, just to clarify, they're not ruthless.
Not drinking on work night. No. And then Friday we went to me and some mates. A mate of mine, he's got a new-ish A class A250.
Right.
Then another mate's got a Q7. I don't know why he came. And then me and Dirk both got Golf R. So we went to one of the few hills in the UAE. In the north of the country, there's quite a few hills and mountains and some nice roads, but at the moment, because of COVID, we can't go there. So we went to this hill just on the Oman border, which is about 100 miles away, and it's quite good fun because there's the road there. The limit on the motorway is actually 100 miles an hour or 160 kilometers an hour. So that's quite good fun because you kind of, especially someone who's used to living in the UK, is like, oh, doing 100 miles an hour is kind of like a big deal. And obviously, you get to 100 miles an hour, and then you're just like, especially the Golf R, you're just like, oh, it's 100 miles an hour, and it's quite happy here.
Yeah,
it's low to the ground as well, so you got sweeping motorway turns, and it's just like, Oh yeah, just turn a little bit and it kind of goes. And you're not, when you're like when you drive rubbish cars and you try and get them up to 100 miles an hour, and it's like re-entry in the space shuttle.
Yes, it is. It is. It's a proper sort of, you're going through a different time barrier,
Yeah, you don't get that in the Golf R. It's just kind of like, oh, it's 160, is it? Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, we're doing about 2/3 of the available speed.
Yeah, it's just effortless for those type of cars, you know.
And then we so obviously then we got up to the hill, and then that was quite good fun. I've taken some life off my tires, but like it was quite good fun. The only problem with it is because it's obviously a public road. There's 2 lanes going up the hill so that you can obviously overtake if you want to go faster. But then obviously there's traffic coming down the hill, and there's obviously blind bends and stuff. So you've got to be quite careful taking corners at speed and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, like it was a little bit kind of disappointing because you just basically spend the whole time in third gear. And yeah, I mean, because you can't really take like racing lines and really like put the power down because you can't use enough of the road to do it. So that was a little bit disappointing, but good fun nonetheless. And then so then Saturday I helped my friend with his I helped him on Friday morning before we went there. And then the reason I was thinking about getting the 4x4 is because another friend of mine last minute on Saturday was like, "Oh, do you want to come out on the boat?" Because he's got a boat. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like good fun. Just, nice way to round off the weekend. Just go and chill on the boat, a few snacks, a couple of beers, all that kind of stuff. And boats are exceptionally good fun, I've decided.
Boats are. I've had a little bit of experience with a boat, but yeah, they are good fun.
Especially like, I mean, they don't go particularly fast, like, but they feel like they're going fast. Like,
yeah, I mean, but some boats do. Well, I know I know it's a car podcast, but some of these boats do actually go very fast. Considering, obviously, you have to remember they're on water.
Yeah.
It obviously doesn't have anywhere near the same properties as like driving on the road. So,
but yeah, I mean, it's also strange, like where people like because where different people are sitting in the boat, because obviously. I was sitting down the back, so that obviously weighed the back down quite significantly. And then Gert and Gio's kids are up the front, so obviously the front was quite light. But on the way back, the adults sat up the front and the kids sat down the back, and because then like the boat was better balanced in the water, it went a lot faster, which is also really interesting. But like, yeah, it's cool because when you obviously put the power down, it's you get this, especially sitting at the back, you're kind of like in this bowl of water that's kind of like the back of the boat kind of goes into like makes the wake, obviously. And you're kind of in this bowl of water that's kind of parting around you, and it's it's quite good fun. But you're only doing like 25 miles an hour, which is
well,
enough.
The thing is though, mate, as I was going to go back to your point about what you were mentioning about your golf driving on these roads. Sometimes speed is fun. But you don't have to be going that fast sometimes to have fun, right?
No, that's true.
And this is why I was going back to kind of what you're saying in terms of when you have a slightly underpowered car and you have to sort of really make the most out of the gears, and you really have to work it. That's fun. Obviously it's not ideal when you're like, when you actually need some power and want to overtake somebody. But if you're sort of, trying to just get the best out of it. Like this is why stuff like the MX-5, for example, are such great cars because they're not massively fast. They're not slow, but they're not fast either. And you really have to work the gearbox, and it's not an effortless drive. You really have to work it and put effort into it. So, yeah, sometimes I think less is more in these circumstances. And this kind of neatly, leads on to what we're going to be talking about today, or a topic we're going to be talking about today, which is actually related to you in some respects because, first cars, right? Now, I know we've mentioned before about our own first cars, and actually, to be fair, I insured, because I still own my first car, I insured it the other day, getting it back on the road. It cost me £185 for the year, which I was quite chuffed with.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? Nearly as much as what I paid for the car. The stupid thing is, though, just a side point, to tax that car is nearly as much as the insurance was for the year, which I think is ridiculous, right? This is what this is what baffles me about this country sometimes, because it's 160 quid to tax it for the year and it's 185 to insure it. It's just mad. But anyway, point being, I got a message last week off, lo and behold, off your brother. Yeah. Specifically your younger brother, who's only just a bit. I didn't realize he's actually only just a bit younger than me. Like, he's 24.
Yeah.
I thought he was like 22 or something. I can't remember, but anyway, got a message off George. For those of you who don't know, and funny enough, I was a big pleasant surprise, and I sent you guys a message, basically saying, "Oh dear, he's doomed," because he's asked me. But having said that, I actually spoke to him yesterday because he wanted to have a chat about some things that he'd seen in cars and stuff like that. And I said, "Why on earth did you contact me first?" And he was like, "Oh, well, I was speaking to my mum, and she said to contact you."
Oh,
and I was like, you know what? Your mum speaks so much sense.
She's
George,
bought a Skoda,
honestly,
and now she just has no forethought in the motoring world anymore. No, that's not fair. That's not fair.
That isn't fair. But point being is, obviously, all jokes aside, I was quite touched that he asked me, because although I'm very good at giving advice when I think it comes to cars, but I'm not very good at accepting it myself and taking it myself. So
the thing is, you don't take your own advice.
Yeah, I don't at all, because I wouldn't want anyone to go through that pain that I've been through, and but when it does work, when it is, it's sometimes worth it. But if it was for me, like I said to you yesterday, you can get let's just rewind a bit. So Rob's brother approached me and said, "Look, I've just passed my test last week and I want to buy a car." Makes sense. He said, "I've got a budget of £3,000, and that includes the cost of the vehicle and the cost to insure it." Right? So he's a 24-year-old guy. Obviously got no previous driving experience. But I thought, in my mind, I was like, cool, he's got £3,000. I reckon insurance would be maximum of £1,000. So it gives him about £2,000 to buy something, which, I mean, I know it's not saying much, but £2,000 for a first car, I think is a lot of money.
He's a keen little saver, is my brother, yeah.
Yeah. So, £2,000, you can get something good for that. I mean, I put things into perspective. I've spent 200 quid on my first car pretty much. And, I don't know how much you spent on your first car, Rob, or if you can remember, but it might have been around that price.
It was about £1,000.
£1,000, right? So you appreciate, and you got something all right for that money as well.
Yeah,
but £2,000 you can get quite good. But having spoken to him and speaking to you, actually, initially he was getting quotes for like over £2,000.
I mean, he wasn't. I mean, initially, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I don't.
I mean, he's got it down. He's got it down
much,
now.
But I don't want to say too much. But he was not looking at things that insurance companies would really be too happy with you owning. Put it that way. I think he was looking at like 2-litre Golfs, and I was like, not in a million years, buddy.
No, not as your first car. Not as your first car.
And obviously, like he's obviously he's actually done a fairly sensible thing in that he was like, I'm going to wait until I'm older because the insurance is going to be less, which is pretty sensible, because I think even in like if he'd have done what me and you did and did it when we were younger, the insurance is more the younger you are, and obviously the less driving experience you have. Go on.
No, but he's proven as well that even though he's older, and maybe it might be different if he was 25, but he's not. But even though he's older, it's still quite expensive because he has no driving experience. So he's pretty much my age, a year apart, and my insurance cost me like 300 quid a year. For my Saab. So, and he's getting charged, and I think he's obviously had to play around a bit, and you've given him some advice and stuff like that about how to help the premium and so on. And then obviously he's looking at more sensible vehicles, which we'll come on to. But I think the cheapest at which he's been able to see is about 1,400 quid.
About that, yeah. I think that was the kind of ballpark he was looking. Yeah.
Yeah, which I still think is more than what I anticipated. And realistically, for some of the stuff he's looking at, it's like 1,500 quid. So really, looking at his current situation, he's got 1,500 quid that he's got to spend on the insurance, which leaves him 1,500 quid on a car, right? Now, 1,500 quid is still, I think, not a bad sum of money to have as a first car. And I think, if anything, I think that's the ideal amount of money to have as a first car, because you can get something okay. Obviously, it's not going to be mint condition. I think I always say to people that you should never get your first car should always be a little bit crap in some respects. Like, because inevitably you're gonna ding it, you're gonna scrape it. Stuff like this just happens, and even if it's not you, it will be somebody else. But that's the joy of having that sort of car. And to be honest with you, the car that I have now is the first car I've properly owned that I actually really care about the bodywork, right? Because it is in very good condition. But prior to that, I didn't care at all. I'd just bung it anywhere, and I just wouldn't be. But I think that's a great thing to have, and I think a lot of young people are missing out on that now because they get a brand new car on finance, or they get something that's quite new. And but anyway,
we've had that discussion before. I just don't understand, especially young people who go and buy a brand new car. Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was a younger person, my life was so kind of transient in terms of, I'm going off to university, and you don't really know so much about what your income's going to be, and your focus should be on, obviously, I mean, for us, was like studying at university and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how people manage to like justify in their minds and make up, and working out that, I can just blow 200 quid a month on a brand new Polo. I think what I missed there is that I'm thinking that person is paying that for themselves. It's not as their parents.
Well, true. Or they just, they make their money off TikTok or something like that. That's what a lot of young people do. TikTok. I don't know.
I'm just going to Google now how to monetize TikTok. What is TikTok?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm being a bit facetious there. But I think you're right. You're right. And the thing is, though, I think he's doing it in the exact in the right way, right? And 1,500 quid to spend on a car, I think is a good starting point. And we were talking about different. And do you know what? I didn't realise just what a selection you had for 1,500 quid. Because when I was looking for cars, I was like, God, blimey, I've only got like 300 quid to spend. What can I get? And you just end up with absolute rubbish, But with the 1,500 quid, you can get some good stuff, and it's annoying because really, for him, like as you said, he has a few criterias, right? So he doesn't want something too big, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't want something too small because he does kayaking and stuff and wants to be able to put stuff on the roof and, something that's got a bit of power. So forget like your Toyota Aigos and Citroen C1s of the world. They're a bit too small. But at the same time, you're not looking at something like, something a bit bigger, like a Skoda Octavia, or maybe something like a VW Bora or something like that, of that size. You need something, ideally, he's probably looking at something realistically Golf size, Golf to Polo size, something like that.
Skoda
but the question is, but you can't get one of them for 1,500 quid, can you?
No, you can't.
No, exactly. So, I mean, yeah. So the point, we were having a bit of a debate about this the other day, and what do you go for? What advice can we give young people as to, what do you go and what can you get in that sort of category, really? It's the question, because you inevitably, being you, obviously, and it runs in your family, automatically suggested a VW, right?
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing. But the problem is, when you're buying German cars from that price bracket, you either have to settle for something that's a lot older or something that's got extremely high mileage.
Yeah, you do. Well, no, I don't know. You can get some nice condition stuff. The problem with Volkswagens have is that it is a bit of a badge, Now you can get some nice stuff. You can get some stuff that is, like you said, I personally would take old over high mileage.
Mm.
I'd take old and low mileage over new and high mileage.
I'm with you, yeah.
And yeah, you can definitely, there are definitely examples out there you could get. I mean, the Polo is a fantastic little car. It is quite solid for the size of car it is, especially if you're, you're probably a little bit paranoid if you're a new driver about being in an accident because you think that might happen. Now,
Oh, I was going to say your car. I remember when you had it, like, even though it wasn't fresh out the box by any means, it did feel well put together, and
yes,
and there was loads of parts about, because for a first driver, sorry to sort of cut in, but you want something that, obviously, if something's going to go wrong, it's not going to be too expensive to fix, and there's parts that are readily available, right? Now, my beef with German cars is that, because obviously they're better made in the first place, but when something does go wrong, the parts tend to be more expensive.
I mean, more expensive than what, Sash?
I'm comparing it to
Italian cars.
Fiat or French cars, they tend to be more expensive. And I know one could say, yeah, but it's a bit of a false economy because you'll have to replace those parts more regularly. Yes, granted, you're right. But if this is a first car, right, you're not going to own it unless you're me, you're not going to own it forever, right?
I mean, I owned mine for quite a long time. I mean, I had mine for a good couple, like 3 years, 3 years.
Yeah, I think you had it.
That's a long enough time. That's a long enough time for you to want to be able to, like, when you buy something, when you replace something goes wrong, you know that it's replaced for
Well, yeah, you
life.
say that, but even stuff, for example, like, I remember, classic case in point, servicing, right? And you should service your car yearly or whenever the mileage interval is.
Yeah.
Your cost of your spark plugs on your Polo was like 4 times the amount mine was on my car. Like, mine were like £2.
But I did the full service. I did the full service for 56 quid, Sash. That's not exactly expensive.
I get that.
Spark plugs are £2 on your Fiat, but that's because I use the same spark plugs as a lawnmower.
You're right.
I have spark plugs for a car. You have spark plugs for fucking garden machinery.
No,
you can't really compare the two.
You can. I mean,
there were leaf blowers in B&Q with more power than your Fiat.
You're right, but I think one could argue, not getting too personal to our first cars, but one could argue that they were both good first cars in their own way, right? They both fulfill different things, and they're both criteria. And I definitely, for your brother, for example, I would definitely more lean towards the approach that you took as opposed to the approach that I took, because he also would want something that can do kind of motorway mileage and something that isn't going to, like, blow your eardrums out, right?
Oh, yeah, the long journeys.
Yeah, well, we've got quite a lot of experience of that, haven't we? let's not talk about that, because that's PTSD right there.
But even then, I mean, I have to say, like, obviously, as your cars get better, like, you used to like, when your first car is obviously, it teaches you a lot about driving and probably, hopefully, a lot about mechanics. So you don't want something too perfect, in my opinion. You want something that is going to break. No, I don't tell my brother that. He'll slate me for that. But you want something that teaches you a little bit about stuff. Now, I don't think first cars should have cruise control. You should definitely have a manual, unless you have some kind of problem that. No, in all seriousness, if you can't drive a manual, then fine. But if there's no actual reason why you can't drive a manual, you should learn on a manual and get a manual as your first car. I remember we had a kid working for us who'd just come out of the UK, and he passed his driving test in an automatic. And I was like, what? Why? And he was like, and he went off on one about how, like, cars are all automatic. It's just absolute snobs who drive manuals. And I was like, no, you're just wrong. Like, anyway, so that was kind of that's a side point about manual cars.
There should be manual, and this final point, like, obviously there shouldn't have too much luxuries in it, because I think you want to be engaged in the driving experience. Now, I'm not saying go for something like my Fiat, which literally had nothing on it, right? The most luxurious thing on it, I think, was which was pretty much. Yeah, that was it. It didn't have any electric windows or power steering. I mean, me being a bit old school, I think not having power steering, I think can actually teach you quite a lot about driving, but it is a little bit inconvenient. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's essential, but it is a nice.
Especially not in this day and age.
You're right. Yeah. But I would say one thing is that obviously it depends what you're doing, but I would definitely always recommend going for a petrol car as a first car, not a diesel. Because let's face it.
I would agree.
Actually, your brother did bring this up. He was like, maybe I should go for a diesel because I'm planning on, driving back to your home place in Devon, for every now and then. I was like, yeah, but look, listen, right? I don't think as your first car, a lot of the time what you're going to be doing is probably mainly pootling around town, doing shorter journeys, going to the shops, etc. as well. Maybe not at the moment with COVID, but you know what I mean? Just sort of that sort of vibe and that sort of thing. And especially if you're buying something at this price bracket, the benefits of buying a diesel, I don't think are enough to outweigh the disadvantages of owning a petrol. And as well as that, in terms of clutch control and stuff like that, I think you can get a lot better clutch control and stuff out of a petrol than you can a diesel. Because a diesel is a lot more forgiving,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously, it's just the fact that you've got piles of torque, so it doesn't really matter. You can just dump the clutch and drive away.
Exactly.
And it's something it took me a little bit of time to get used to again, being back in a petrol car, actually driving a petrol car around. Obviously, when I got the Golf, is that the petrols don't. I mean, even the Golf engine does have a lot of power and a lot of torque. So it is quite forgiving, but it's nowhere near as forgiving as a diesel.
No,
like you really have to. You really have to try to stall a diesel.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to hold it on the brake as you let the clutch out.
Yeah.
No. Whereas and I think you're right there. It's definitely a small, low-powered petrol is a good thing to go for, and that of course is reflected in your insurance premiums. Because if you went for a 2-litre turbo diesel as your first car, the insurance are gonna cack themselves and just try and charge you like $5 or $6 grand for your insurance.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think where we're at now, I had a chat with my brother the other day. He is still looking at the Polos, but obviously they are a bit more expensive. But then I think he's also looking at things like the kind of the Group B Polos.
Yes.
The Polo B team. So
like stuff like
the Seat Leon, the Skoda Fabia.
Yeah. The thinking man's
VW.
Audi A1, wow.
But the Audi A1 is not.
No,
it's the other end.
Yeah.
Is the Polo for people with too much money.
Yes. Pretty much.
So I think he's gonna. I don't know. I don't think he was. You told me trying to wind me up saying he's going to buy an Alpha.
No.
I don't think he's going to buy an Alpha. I don't think he's.
No, he won't. He won't. I mean, I have to say, if you're just looking for value for money, I mean, the 147 that I sent Rob a 147 yesterday, Alfa Romeo, is actually pretty good value for what you're getting, But he will end up on the side of the road in a cloud of steam. So I don't want that to happen to your brother in his first year of driving. So
it also doesn't really go with the kind of image of like roof rack and kayaks on the roof.
I don't know. I could. No, you're right. It's not really that thing. Personally, I mean, you could talk lengths on ends about what sort of cars he could get, but I think we've sort of highlighted it already. Obviously, he wants something Golf, Polo size. I mean, something like Golf size is just going to be a little bit, more settled on the motorway, bigger compared to something like a Polo, but somewhere in that bracket.
What kind of engines can you get for that? Like, realistically, you can't really get much more than the 1.4, which is going to have like the power to weight on that is terrible.
No,
we've said like you should get a smaller engine, but a 1.4 in a Golf is just.
Well, this is the trouble. See, from that era of car, if he's going for something Golf size, I really think it needs to be. And this is the maximum I think that you can afford at that ssort of as your first car, as a 1.6, maybe at a push.
Yeah.
But you're right, a 1.4 in a Golf, it just won't move. But, in a Polo, fine. That would be like quite a fast Polo, actually. But 1.6...
Well, mine had a 1.4 and it wasn't that quick.
Well, we're talking relatively speaking, Rob. But, I mean, it was a lot... Well, anyway...
It was a lot quicker than your Cinquecento.
Yes, but that's not saying much.
But
I
then
suppose. but horses.
Tectonic plates move faster than your Cinquecento.
You're not wrong there. But I think it then comes down to, because I was looking at all sorts of stuff yesterday within like on Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace, Auto Trader, you name it.
Yeah.
And there is a sea of cars that you can get for the money. But I think realistically speaking, for something of that criteria, I think something like a Skoda Fabia is pretty much probably the best car that you can get if you're looking for something that might be a bit better on the motorway, is going to be reliable.
You get the Skoda Fabia Estate as well.
You can. I mean, he was looking for something smaller, but yeah, you can get the estate. And I've known loads of people who've owned Skoda Fabias of that era, and they never break.
They're just Polos.
Yeah, because they're just true. They are just Polos. But I have to say, I most of the people that I've known who've owned the Fabias though have tended to have the diesel ones. Having said that, and I know diesel VWs and that of that era were very good, very reliable. I think you'll vouch that sometimes the petrols of that era of VW weren't the best.
No, they tend to have. Some of them tend, if you don't look after them really well, they tend to have slightly leaky head gaskets.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially the 1.4 I have. I mean, I know the 1.4 I have has been scrapped now, so I can say that I know that had a little bit of a leaky head gasket because I kept finding little bits of oil in the. I mean, it's fine. You just kind of have to just keep an eye on it, basically.
I mean, yeah. If your first car doesn't have a leaky head gasket problem, you're not doing it properly, mate. Because I had head gasket problems as well. But
depends which way it's going, really. If it's oil leaking into the water, you're probably all right. If it's water leaking into the oil, then you've really got a problem. So
yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, yeah. I mean, I did also show him the Fiat Punto, Grande Punto, which I previously owned my current car. They're not bad cars, and they're pretty reasonable to insure as well. But again, you're suffering with you're suffering being Italian. They do have electrical gremlins. So I think what we're saying is essentially, and I know we don't want to keep it too specific to your brother here, but I think the point is, if you've got that sort of budget for your first car, you buy something small, petrol, manual, something that is going to be semi-reliable, like a Skoda or something like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not having
teaches you lots about driving.
Yeah, we're not having a downer on other, car manufacturers. Like I would recommend Italian still, but not in this particular.
Depending on your perception or your views, you could go for something like a Ford Fiesta.
Yeah.
Or a Vauxhall Corsa if you're really.
I mean, a lot of people do go for them. To be honest, mate, I completely forgot about them. If I'm being brutally honest.
I mean, you could also, if if you're really just doing town mileage, something like a Peugeot 10. Is it Peugeot 107, the small one? Or the Citroen C1?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing just specifically town mileage, I would recommend stuff like that because they are pretty good on fuel. And they're light cars. Like a friend of mine's girlfriend has a Toyota Aygo, right, which is essentially the same car. And man, that is so fun to drive. That is the closest thing, of the modern era that I found to my Fiat in terms of fun.
Yeah.
Fun to drive, and they are fun to drive because they're so light. Well,
it also has a gearbox that's like mixing coal.
Well, yeah, I mean, true. I mean, the Aygo's gearbox was a bit better, to be fair, but. Yeah, they're fun to drive. But the thing is, though, because your brother's circumstances happen to be specifying about a bit of motorway mileage every now and then, or a bit more frequently, I think it's something a bit bigger.
By the Germans.
Yeah, I have to say he's probably right. Having said that, though, I've got to give it to Fiat, though, for example. I mean, Mike's girlfriend had a Fiat Grande Punto as well, same as me. They sold that with like 145,000 miles on the clock. And it was still going. It was fine.
Oh yeah, no, they go on for if you look after stuff, it goes on forever. It's like anything really.
The only thing I would say though, as you touched upon earlier, is about mileage. Now, I'm of the view that mileage, people inherently go for lower mileage stuff, right? And I get it, because there's a sense of once it hits 100,000, it's on its last legs. That's not the case, right? Now, I wouldn't necessarily say to your brother, go buy a 220,000 mile Volvo or something like that. But the point is, I think with a petrol car, a small petrol car, I think if they've generally been looked after, you're good up to about 150,000 miles. I'd say that's a safe amount. I'm not saying buy one with 150,000, but I'm just saying, they can go up to 150,000. I think that's a safe bet.
Especially newer cars. Like, I mean, when you talk about 90s cars, like, you definitely want to get something below 100,000. Things that are kind of, mid to late noughties, I guess now is what we're looking at. Then I would tend to agree with you there.
Yeah, and the advice I gave to your brother, and I know this is maybe a psychological thing, is look for anything up to 100,000 miles. That would be like, my maximum for his case. Because let's face it, am I right in saying he's not like us in the sense of, I don't think he'd be the type of person that wants to spend his weekends fixing his car all the time. And I don't think he's not, that mechanically minded in that sense. So he wants something that's going to be reliable, is the point that I'm trying to make. So something like that, it needs to be good. It needs to be reliable. So, yeah, I mean,
I don't think he'd be afraid to poke around under the bonnet and do.
No, I don't deny that at all. So I think, but crucially, I mean, the most important thing though is you've got to get something that's reasonable to insure as well. That's the main thing, really, at this age. When it's your first car, you want to keep your premiums low. And I said to him as well, if you end up doing quite a lot of mileage, you don't have to keep the car forever. You could get a year's no claim underneath your bonnet. You turn 25. And if you really want a diesel for motorway mileage, buy yourself a diesel. It's not the end of the world, right? And it will come down. So that's our tips there. Buy something small, petrol, manual, something of that price range. Probably German. I do recommend Japanese cars as well. I know you're not a fan of them, Rob, but I think Japanese cars are bulletproof as well. They are very reliable. My parents have had a lot of Japanese cars over the years. And they just never put a foot wrong. They never do. It's always the car that, my mum had a Mazda 323. It's the longest car we had she only sold it last year, but we had that for 15 years in the family. It literally never let us down. It never didn't make it to a destination. It never not started, when we needed it to. And whenever inevitably me and my dad had less reliable cars at time, and it'd be like, car's broken, use mum's. So, it's fine. But, so I think that's our conclusion. And I think that kind of links in a very weird way to something that I wanted to talk about as well is, as we know, right? Well, not everyone knows this, but I'm a car enthusiast and I've owned at least 2 cars in my time of owning cars since about 6 years ago now, right? So 2 years after driving. And the reason for that, I think, is that I don't think one car can fulfill all of your needs. Now, I'm not saying the 2 cars that I own do that, but...
Sash. What? The automotive fuckboy.
No, but you know what I mean, right? It makes me sound like a slag or something like that, or a hoe. But that's
Sash has bought a car, but his car sees him on Auto Trader.
Yeah, well, I mean,
swiping right.
No,
swiping.
And maybe we might need to extend this conversation for when Mike's here as well. But I really do think that if money was no object, but say you're in a fortunate financial position where sometimes I think you might have an occasion where the car goes, I really fancy winding down a British B road in early March or beginning of spring, and you want something like 2-seater, low, convertible. That's what you want, right? And then you're thinking, right, okay, the next day you're like, I need to drive to not Liverpool at the moment because they're very heavily COVID infected, and Boris has just been on the news about that. Say you want to drive to Scotland for whatever reason from the south, right? You need something that's going to chew up the miles, it's going to be comfortable, it's going to get you there in styling and so on and so forth.
Audi A6 3-litre diesel,
yeah, something like that. And then say the next day you want to, I don't know, bomb around the track or something like that and take your car on the track. The point is, there's a lot of cars out there nowadays that obviously do all of them jobs pretty well, but inevitably they are compromised in some way, right? Because they're trying to fulfill multiple needs. Now, I know that may sound like an obvious thing, right? But I wanted to gauge your viewpoint on this, because if money was no object to me, or I was, in a very fortunate position where I could store cars and blah, blah, like I would have like a 4x4, a convertible, a jet fighter, or something that would chew up the miles. Because the thing is, and what's made me realise this, is my actual new car, right? Is that although I have two cars, the first car I'm referring to is useless as a car, so I don't really classify it as a car. I mean, it's great fun every now and then, but that's just that I just keep that for sentimental and traveling down memory lane, because every time I drive it, I think of my early days as a teen and so on. But my Saab, right, or driving across Europe or what have you, is a good car. I like it, but inevitably it is compromised, right? And one could say maybe there's better cars in the class that would make me not feel like as though it's that compromised. But for instance, economy, right? I own a diesel car now, which I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like diesel. I don't really like diesel cars. I get why they're there and I get why they exist, and I never have to refuel the bloody thing, which I think is amazing. You just fill up the tank and it just goes forever. Which is, I was like, blimey, I could have saved.
That is the best thing about having a diesel. But, I don't fill up the Polo very often, which is just a symptom of the fact that I'm obviously not going to the office very much. So, but like if I was driving it every day, on a run, it's good. You'll get like 30, 35, 36 to the gallon, which is good. But like around town, and especially like the problem, and this is the problem with the manual over the automatic, because when you have the automatic, like Dirk does, you just put it in drive, and it just it's in sixth, and it's just not burning any fuel. Because I'm driving the car myself, and I'm like, all right, let's go. I need to pull out onto the roundabout now. So obviously, like you get a bit enthusiastic about getting onto the roundabout, and then you're like, oh, I felt the power, and then you want to feel the power some more, and then you spend your entire short journey to the shops feeling the power, and then you realise you've consumed quite a lot of petrol doing that.
Yes. Yes.
Which is good fun. I have spent a lot of time driving around the place like my hair's on fire, but it's not exactly the most economical thing in the world. But no, I miss the diesel, because the diesel was great, because you could just fill that thing up. The Bora was great. You could fill it up, and then I used to commute every day, 50 miles each way to work and back, and I managed to do a week and a half's commuting on one tank, doing 100 miles a day. I managed to get 720 miles out of a tank. I was over the moon when I got it back. I was like, I rolled into the gas station on fumes.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, wow, that's over 1,000 kilometers on one tank.
That's amazing. So I'm just trying to work that out. What miles to the gallon were you doing then?
About 62.
That's amazing. I mean, that's better than actually what I've managed to achieve so far in my Saab, actually, to be fair.
And the Saab's got a bigger tank, I think.
It has got a bigger tank, but I don't think...
That Bora, when you put it on a run and just set it to like 70 miles an hour on the cruise control, it just chug. And it doesn't burn any fuel at all. Like, it is a joy to drive around. Like, I remember like last year, I was helping a friend in Wales move to Rotterdam. So I came back from Abu Dhabi to the UK, flew in, and then I came down to yours to use the car. And like, I think I filled it up in Worthing, and then we drove. Then I drove. I mean, in one day it was a bit of a trek, to be honest. But I drove all the way up to Wales, packed all my mate Alex's stuff in his car, and then drove all the way to Rotterdam. And there was still like basically just less than half a tank in it. And I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah, it is incredible. It is incredible. But yeah, for me, going back, like, not specifically having to go at diesel here, but the economy is obviously great, and it's let's face it, the main reason why you buy a diesel, for economy, right? You don't buy a diesel for anything else, right?
I don't know. Like, there is a big. I mean, if you had a German motoring enthusiast on here, they would argue the toss with you, because there's quite a lot of Germans who are quite passionate about diesel. Now, I don't know if that's just a German thing.
I don't. Yeah.
But they do have quite a nice torque delivery for the size engine you buy.
Yeah, they have. It's just, and I don't want to be too hasty here, because as of yesterday or the day before, I can now, because I'm 25, I can now drive any person's car in the UK third party, right? Because I've sorted out the insurance and stuff like that now. And what I want to do is drive next time I can your Bora, right? That's in the vicinity of my family now. And I want to compare, because I've never really driven a diesel up until buying this Saab, right? And I just want to compare them, because I'm interested, because the Saab diesel is fine, right? But I don't know whether it's just because I keep going back into comparing it to petrol, but it's just nowhere near as smooth. Like, they just feel agricultural, and I'm still not used to that. And as well as that,
I have to admit, I think, and this might be slight bias on my part, I felt, compared to other diesels I've driven, I did feel that the Bora is less agricultural. It is more car engine orientated. You do have to kind of have to work the gearbox a little bit. The gearbox is quite a nice. There's quite a lot of feel to the gearbox. There's quite a lot of feel to the accelerator. There's a lot of feel to the clutch. Whereas there's a lot of diesels. And Mike will probably hate me for saying that. I think even his Vectra wasn't particularly. It wasn't it didn't give you a lot of feedback. But even then, the Bora definitely gives you sort of less. I don't know. Like, Volkswagen is strange because they're very good at making very consistent vehicles. Like, there isn't a lot of, in terms of the way the car drives and handles, between the Polo I had, the Bora, and the Golf I have now. Obviously, the Golf I have now and the Bora are quite a lot more powerful. They're quite a lot heavier, all those kind of things. But you're pretty much always changing gear in more or less the same-ish kind of place. Steering angle input is almost always pretty much the same for the same rate of turn. And they're very good at that, and it's really uncanny that they manage that.
Well, they're Germans, aren't they?
Yeah, no, that is true. That is true. I'm going to be really interested to see what your opinion is on the Bora versus the Saab, because I mean the Saab, you're not going to like that. The Saab is essentially quite a lot of the powertrain is
Well,
GM.
I mean, this is why I want to do the comparison, because although the Saab is 5 years newer than your Bora, and it has got extremely low miles, particularly for a diesel, right? It's essentially a new car, to be honest, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of, powertrain and stuff like that, it's been very well looked after, serviced on the dot, blah, blah, blah. But, and as well as this, I don't know whether it's because I own an estate one as well, which I don't know, it would be interesting, but you can really feel the weight of the engine up front. Like, and I know.
You'll feel that in the Bora as well.
the diesel obviously is a heavier engine, right? And I appreciate that. And I don't know whether it's because I own an estate. It is a heavy car, my car, the Saab. It is a very heavy car, and it just feels front nose heavy, and it just doesn't feel balanced. I don't know whether it would actually feel a bit better if it had some weight over the rear axle, and that's why I'd be interested to drive like a saloon diesel like your Bora to see whether that makes any difference, and B, maybe drive something like a BMW diesel, which would be rear wheel drive and have a better 50-50 weight or close to 50-50 weight distribution. So these are the questions that remain unanswered in my mind. But going back to the point, like, there is compromises there, and and to be honest with you, sorry, going back to the diesel thing, I'm jumping around a bit, but I think this will probably be the last diesel that I actually ever own, because I think so. The economy is great, but I miss petrol.
Would you not just have like a diesel estate for your
this goes back
runabout? Because you're a man who wants a harem of cars.
Yeah.
You could have like as well, the other thing is 4x4s, especially in the UK. There is no point buying a V8 petrol 4x4 in the UK because I mean, half the country would probably lynch you for it. I mean, everything here is a V8 petrol 4x4, like big 4x4s. You've got 5.7 litre Land Cruisers and Jeep Cherokees have got big V8s in them. Nissan Patrols, big petrol V8s. And yeah, you just would not. Running one of those in the UK would bankrupt you. Probably bankrupt you here, to be honest. Even with fuel at 20p a litre.
It wouldn't be great, no.
Like, it's just mega. So I mean, if you're gonna like a diesel, definitely makes sense if you've got a 4x4.
Well, and this is the point I'm trying to make. Like, you're right, and this is why I was going back to the original point of I don't think all cars suit needs. For somebody like me, you know, the Saab is great, and I do like it, and I like the fact that it's quirky and it is comfortable and blah blah blah. But I'm gonna say this as well. It doesn't fulfil all my needs in the sense of, you know, I would like something like a little 4x4, a little convertible sports car. And as well as that, you'll probably back me up here. I have had one luxury car before this Saab, and I know it's a different category of car and different sort of different range it fits in. But the Alpha 166 that I had was an extremely comfortable car to drive, right? The seats were fantastic, and the Saab seats are fantastic as well. It was very well insulated inside. There was a lot of cabin noise, and I know it was a petrol as well. But in terms of pure luxury, that was a better car than the Saab, right? And I know it's a bigger car, and I get that, and that makes sense. But this is why I think the Saab is compromised in that respect, because it's not the biggest, you know, luxurious car out there. Saab's never claimed to be that. But well, where am I going with this? I don't know where I'm going with this. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, it's, you know, because part of me...
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I mean, that's why different cars exist.
True.
There's no one size fits all model. There is, you know, certain car companies do try to make that kind of one size, you know, one car for every, pretty much anything you could ever want to do. Things like the Audi RS6, for example. Obviously, it's not a hardcore off-roader.
No.
But it is obviously you could do a little bit of rallying, like the RS4 and the RS6. You could do a little bit of loose surface kind of work on it, and it is like a big estate, so you can pack all of Liechtenstein in there. But
true.
Yeah, but it's obviously not a high. It's obviously not going to, you know, it's obviously not a convertible, and it's obviously not going to take you very far off road. But if you want to go really, really fast on the track and then drive home and then take the kids to school and go and walk the dog, does all of those things.
True.
You know, but yeah, I can see what you're saying. Like, you're someone who,
I like a bit of everything.
The thing is, for most people's needs, they don't need a 4x4 most of the time. I mean, 4x4s are increasingly popular, and I cannot see the reason why you can justify why you need a 4x4. Especially
I agree.
Like,
I don't.
The amount of them that are around now, and I'm just like, what is the point? But anyway,
Sorry, I mean, you're right. I mean, I don't need a 4x4, and I probably wouldn't even take it off road that much. I just kind of want one, just you know.
Oh, you're one of those people.
No. I would.
This is because you grew up in West Sussex. You get to about 25, and you go, oh, do you know what? Actually, I want. No.
But let me just. What I was going to say though is that I don't want something like a. I mean, a Range Rover would be nice, but I don't want something like a massive 4x4. I wouldn't want like a Range Rover or a Land Cruiser or something. I want like a small dinky 4x4. So like something like, you know, an ancient Land Rover short wheelbase, or like something even like a Suzuki Jimny, or even something. And you're going to be like typical Sash here.
Panda
you said it. You've got it. I would love something like that. I just think it would be so much. It would be a laugh, right? But I'm just weighing up in my head whether I want a little 4x4 more than I want another 2-seater convertible sports car.
I think
that's
I don't know, mate. It sounds a lot like you're having a midlife crisis.
Quarter life crisis, mate. Quarter life crisis. Yeah.
Quarter life crisis. I mean, I'm surprised you haven't come back to the idea of getting a motorbike.
No, I'm just not interested in motorbikes.
Motorbikes look like great fun.
But you have to get a new light. Well, I don't know. But anyway, we've digressed quite a bit, and we waffled around quite a lot of this particular podcast,
I'm
going to have to. But we've come to a conclusion. Well, a couple of conclusions from today. First of all, we do agree that not one car fits all, right? I mean, it does for most people, but if you're a car enthusiast and you're really into your cars, right, not one car is going to fulfill your needs. That's what we've come to the conclusion of. For your first car, going back to the first half of the podcast, we've concluded that you want something small, petrol, manual, something that's going to be semi-lightweight, something that's not going to be too expensive, and something that you don't want, you're not going to be worried about dinging it. And I think that's kind of it. That's all we've established.
We've gone a long way around the houses to establish.
Yes, we did.
Two fairly self-evident points.
If you've wasted the past hour listening to this, then please direct your messages to Mike, who isn't here.
Tell him to come back.
Mike, you're welcome. And yes, well, thank you.
You can find him at mike.hargreaves.
I actually can't remember his Instagram tag. It's something like Mike095 or something like that. Maybe I'll put something in the description below. But for those of you who are still listening, or the one viewer that is listening, or listener, should I say, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of the Stories with Sash podcast. We'll be back next week for more motoring related stuff. And just want to say thank you, Rob, for joining me on again.
You're very welcome.
Well, thank you all for listening, and I'll dump the outro music right about now.